Good afternoon, and this is a special edition of our key affiliate, which is My Vital C. Welcome to Chris Burres, owner, founder, and chief scientist, and author of Live Longer and Better. He is our affiliate with Freedom Forum News for My Vital C. Chris comes from Houston, Texas, is a mechanical engineer with a Bachelor of Science in that, and has been in this area since 1991, one of the the very first peak of this research. Can you tell us about this molecule ESS60, Chris?
Well, Marianne, thank you so much for having me. And again, thank you for you're even going to let me do my presentation, which is I get to be super geeky. So I'm excited about that. And so thank you so much. And then if we can hop into that presentation, I'll talk about this molecule. This is just pretty exciting. This happened pretty recently. I was on Dave Asprey's podcast. If you know Dave Asprey, he's the father of biohacking. He's the founder of Bulletproof Coffee. He's a marketing genius and a health and wellness expert extraordinaire. So I was very lucky to be on his show. We're talking about this molecule. This molecule called ESS60 was discovered in 1985 at Rice University, and that's here in Houston where we're based, where our lab is based. And the three scientists who discovered it, it's actually their photo here, Smalley, Kroto, and Curl. They actually went on to win the Nobel Prize in 1996 for that discovery way back in 1985. Our lab started manufacturing it in 1991. So I'm not a very braggadocious person, but I am comfortable saying it's not unreasonable to suggest that because we were delivering commercial quantities of this carbon nanomaterial to research institutions around the world, and because scientists around the world could work with this material and understand its value, that's part of the reason that these three scientists won the Nobel Prize for the award of discovering the molecule. Part of the reason they won the award is this molecule is actually amazing. It performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. So it makes better inks, better batteries, better tires, better photocells. And this is often where people get a little bit nervous because they're like, I thought this... Right. This is the health supplement. Nobody in your audience woke up today, looked out at their car battery and thought, I wonder what part of my car battery I should be taking on a daily basis. And actually, the story gets a little worse because this one shape that's front and center on this ESS60 molecule has the same shape as benzene. Now, benzene is ubiquitous in our society and necessary for modern society. I can offer up as an example, if you look around you, everything that's plastic would be gone without the benzene ring. Many medications, including aspirin, have the foundational molecule, the benzene ring. So it's great for modern society. One of the challenges, though, is when that molecule, when this ring is on its own with hydrogens on the exterior of it, it's known to be toxic and known to be carcinogenic. And there's actually 20 of these rings throughout this ESS60 molecule. And for that reason, they thought the molecule would be toxic. They put it in a toxicity study. And instead of being toxic, the test subjects, well, there's three key pieces of this study, but the test subjects lived 90% longer than the control group. So that's the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals and history. And if it's at any point, if you want to jump in with a question, I am watching you, so you can raise your hand. I'm happy to kind of segue. What I do want to talk about is the three key aspects of this study that was published in mid-2012. One is the lifespan extension. Another is a tumor-free aging aspect. And then finally, they did a carbon tetrachloride challenge study, which is really looking at oxidation on the liver. So I'm just gonna jump right into that. Yep. So first, and this is the most spectacular piece of the study, is that there were three groups of rats. One group was given water, that's a control group. One group was given olive oil, that's kind of a semi-control group. And one group was given olive oil with the ESS60 molecule. A typical Wistar rat, in this case, the control group, that group given water, lives about 32 months. And that's exactly what happened in this study. Now, the rats given olive oil lived out to 38 months on average. That's another 18%. So I always like to suggest if you're consuming olive oil or you're not consuming it at all, you should probably consume more olive oil. I love what Dr. Gundry says. He says that the purpose of food is to get more olive oil into your mouth. That's how important the olive oil is. And that's still only 18%. You stretch this all the way out here to the ESS 60 group, they lived 62 months. And then we're going to talk about the fact that none of them had any tumors. This is, again, the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, peer-reviewed, published research. I want to jump directly to this, the tumor piece of this. Now, this is pretty fantastic. So a typical Wistar rat lives out to about 32 months and has a known amount of tumor mass in its body. The longer it lives, the more tumor mass it has in its body. You can see in this graph, the tumor's getting bigger because there is more tumor mass in these rats as they age. Even though the MyVitalC rats lived out to 62 months, none of them had any tumors, right? So if you were to project this line, the tumor mass should have been out here and should have been massive. Instead, 0 tumors. Now, I've told this story to a number of people, and some people was like, "Oh, cure for cancer." I'm like, "Whoa, wait, no." And then I follow that with another no. There's a big difference between dealing with a tumor that has metastasized, a cancer that has metastasized, and potentially, as this implies, being a cancer preventative. We know things as simple as good nutrition, good exercise, good sleep can be cancer preventatives. This piece of that story throws this molecule into that arena. I'm also going to add, because I think it's very relevant, this one piece, which is it's a Petri dish study, which, by the way, is one of the lowest levels of studies that you can do, even below anecdotes. But it is valuable here, and I'll kind of tell you why. So in this Petri dish, they had healthy cells and they had cancer cells, and they introduced an anti-cancer agent. Now, anti-cancer agents are poisons. You're hoping to poison the cancer cells before the healthy cells. So in the presence of the ESS60 molecule, when they introduced this anti-cancer agent, there was increased efficacy against the cancer cells and protective effects for the healthy cells. So what that means is more in the presence of the ESS60 molecule, more cancer cells died, less healthy cells died. So this is a pretty profound result. So we're excited about that. And I want to talk about, I think I'm trying to figure out where I have, the next thing that I would talk about, if you don't have any questions, I would talk about this, potential mechanism.
The next thing I was going to ask specifically is about the mitochondria. If you can get in very specifically to explain how the molecule works to take out the free radicals. You go to it, Chris.
Yeah, no, it's pretty fantastic. Now, this is the current theory, right? Buffering oxidative stress system, which is kind of cool, the BOSS theory. So we know from peer-reviewed published research that this ESS60 molecule gets into the mitochondria. We also know from way back in the 90s that this molecule can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles. So here's how that plays out, right? Quick refresher. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of every cell. There's between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell in your body, except for your blood cells, which actually have 0, and your brain and neurons, which have 2 million. It is amazing how much energy our nervous system uses relative to our other systems. Like any power source, there is a negative byproduct. You think about your car going down the road, it's got exhaust. You think about a power plant, it's got a smokestack, it's got smoke. In the case of mitochondria, it's reactive oxygen species. And in this image, they're either bonded or unbonded. You can imagine that the bonded are safer. And so you have these mitochondria producing this byproduct of reactive oxygen species. And internal to the mitochondria, you have the antioxidants melatonin and glutathione to manage those reactive oxygen species. So you see here in a healthy, unstressed mitochondria, you've got these blue reactive oxygen species because they're either bonded with melatonin or glutathione.
Right.
But what happens when you stress a mitochondria? So the first question is, well, how do I stress a mitochondria? I like to point out, if you're alive in modern society, you have stressed mitochondria, right? Whether it's smoking, drinking, tough exercise, EMF exposure, and that could be, from your cell phone, or maybe on a plane flight, you're getting additional EMF coming off of your devices, tough emails, tough conversations. that stresses your mitochondria. And now your mitochondria start producing more reactive oxygen species than can be managed internally. You can see in this image, some of the reactive oxygen species are being managed by glutathione and melatonin, but some are also not. And at this point, they can get away. And I like to picture them like little bumper cars, where everything that they run around and smack into, they're causing oxidative stress, oxidative damage, rust if it were a bumper car, and then ultimately inflammation. So here's where the ESS60 molecule shines. We know from peer-reviewed published research that the ESS60 molecule gets into the mitochondria. And then we know that it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles. So here, this is producing more reactive oxygen species than can be managed by the resident glutathione and melatonin, but those reactive oxygen species aren't doing any damage because they're bonded to the ESS60 molecule. Now, it holds on to them like a buffer until that particular mitochondria can replenish the glutathione and replenish the melatonin. And then it's going to bond to these and turn them into those kind of delicate bonded reactive oxygen species, so that the mitochondria and the cell that it's in don't ever experience the damage that they would have. So the summary of that is, we believe we're reducing the negative impact of stress mitochondria. And if you reduce the negative impact of stress mitochondria, you should have systemic benefits, and you should have what we have, which are head-to-toe testimonials.
So when we get into this particular subject, we're talking about aging. We're talking about what happens as we get older. Our mitochondria is not as efficient, lacks those the glutathione. If I got that correct?
Glutathione and melatonin, yeah.
Yep. So because it lacks that and isn't producing, it's not going to be as efficient to getting rid of the free radicals. So aging, mainly, can I bring up another topic? Because this is something which is to do with mitochondria.
Sure.
I'm going to bring it up. Many of our audience are wondering, some people have taken what's called the COVID injections. And what has been discussed is that those have affected the mitochondria in particular, and that it is affecting the immune system. Can we talk about, is there hope that there be some work that in taking this, there will be some repair to those mitochondria? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay. Yeah, well, first off, I mean, this is probably a really good point for me to interject our FDA disclaimer, right? Yep. I'm going to talk about anecdotes. I'm going to talk about experiences of people. I always just say, hey, just assume this isn't going to happen to you. Listen to the research, maybe dig into the research, and I'm sure there'll be some link that we will provide at some point if they're interested in trying it. And also the FDA disclaimer is the FDA has not evaluated the product. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. I have had people ask me, hey, if people are reporting to me that this molecule is having a positive impact in the scenario you described, what might that positive impact be? Well, first off, I mean, even just with that virus and many viruses in general, what often causes the damage is the cytokine storm that happens as our body's trying to defend itself. And this could be either from an injection or from the actual live virus. And that cytokine storm, it overwhelms and ends up doing damage. Well, it's driven by the mitochondria actually producing more reactive oxygen species than can be managed internally, right? Your run rate, like your mitochondria are like, we have a lot of fighting that we need to do. We have a lot of work that we need to do. We're going to spin up energy production. And as we spin up energy production so that the cell can do its job, we're also producing more reactive oxygen species than can be managed by that glutathione and melatonin. And now you end up in this scenario where you've got those reactive oxygen species running around, and this is the perfect description. Everything they smack into, they're causing rust, they're causing damage, and that's that cytokine storm. Now, if you've got this ESS60 molecule in here, in the mitochondria, holding on to those extra reactive oxygen species so they can't run around and do any damage, at that point, you're preventing the damage and you're giving the body time. I've got this example that I like to use. I actually have two, but you're giving the body the time it needs. So the reality is stress is good for us. If we don't stress ourselves, we have a problem. That's why you should work out. That's why you should work on improving your VO2 max, your balance, your flexibility. as an example, if you doubt me, astronauts go into space, right? And they don't have gravity, and they come back and they are health dumpster fires. Their bone density is decreased, their immune system is compromised, all from a reduction of stress. So stress is important. I like to picture us as like little prairies with beautiful prairie grasses and prairie flowers. And the gentle rain is the appropriate amount of stress, right? You need that gentle rain or the prairie dies. You need some stress or we die. But what happens if you get this deep, dark cloud pouring water, a stream of water into one spot? You're actually going to create a hole, a mud hole, if you're lucky, or an actual hole. And that is the damage that this intense stress causes. And that's where I kind of picture this ESS60 molecule like a sponge between that deep, dark cloud and the prairie, soaking up that stress, that stream of stress. Now, it's important to notice, if you don't manage that deep, dark cloud, if you don't remove the stress from you, if you just keep living this forced stress life, eventually the sponge is going to fill up. It's going to start pouring back on that mud puddle again, right? But if you do let that deep, dark cloud go away, right, and it moves on, now you can kind of take this. I like to picture this is a sponge, and you squeeze that water gently across the prairie, and the prairie has managed, the system has managed the stress without any of the damage. I hope that analogy helps.
Are we saying that in taking the ESS60 molecule, we also have to be particularly careful and noting we can't go back to the free radical diets. We have to be working with, as you pointed out in another interview, the Mediterranean diet, for example. So if we stay with very good organics, and we on our part, we have a responsibility as well. Is that make sense?
Here's what I would say. If you were to come to me and say, Chris, as kind of a new longevity expert, what should I focus on first? I'll be honest, it wouldn't necessarily be my product, right? You should focus on your diet. You should focus on your sleep. You should focus on your exercise. Those three things, and mindset, right? Where is your stress level with mindset? And I think of mindset as two things: your mindset to do the right things for you, and then your mindset to manage the stress that is inherent in this modern world. There are situations where I see people starting first with our product, and it has some benefits, right? It helps relieve some of these stresses, as we've described, which get people into a better place so that their mindset can be helped. And then their mindset can start helping them address their nutrition, their sleep, and their exercise. But if your intent is like, I'm going to sit on the couch, I'm going to eat the standard American diet, which is sad, right? The standard American diet, and I'm going to take my Vital C, like, I just save your money, right? The reality is this is really can help you, launch you in the direct path, but you do have to take ownership of those things.
Yeah, you do have to have that lifestyle. That's what I kind of gathered as well. I mean, none of us are perfect, but we need to also take our own responsibility. I mean, it's just, it makes sense. I want to talk a little bit about also for those people who did not take the COVID injection. There's a concern about getting shedding and things like that happening. Can you describe how this molecule will help people who would be experiencing that shedding?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I haven't kind of dug into the literature on shedding, so that is not my area of expertise. I understand the concept, and if you're getting exposure to this, right, then the same story rings true. It's kind of interesting because once we understand the boss theory, it starts to be the explanation of so many things. You think about those rats that were able to manage the carbon tetrachloride, right? That was one piece of the study. Well, why? Well, if you're helping the cell, if you're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria on a liver cell, then the liver cell is going to do better, right? And then people are like, could it have an impact on kidneys? Interesting. This molecule is not water soluble, it's oil soluble. And still, we believe that it's getting into kidney cells and kidney mitochondria. So could this have a positive impact on your kidneys? Well, if it's getting into the mitochondria and reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, then yes. How about your brain, right? One of my favorite testimonials is we got some product to a lady in the UK. She sent in a testimonial video and we had comped her the product. And she came back and she started her video with, I'm in the middle of quitting smoking. Now, if you've ever been around anybody who's quitting smoking, my parents quit lots of times as I was growing up. It was not pleasant, right? Or it was
No,
certainly
it's
less pleasant. Not pleasant
yeah.
might be a little bit harsh, but it's less pleasant. It's stress. Your body's detoxing off of this nicotine and also all the chemicals in the cigarettes. So I thought this is going to be a horrible testimonial. Like I wasted sending her the product all the way to the UK. But in fact, she gave an amazing testimonial. And one piece that stuck with me is she said, I found myself having a longer fuse with my toddler. Now, if you've ever raised children, or frankly, if you've ever been around people, sometimes you have a short fuse and sometimes you have a long fuse. And sometimes you're
Oh,
like,
yeah,
wow,
it's been there. Yep. Yep.
right? Normally I would have handled that better, or normally I would have handled, who knows? But the fact that she noticed that she had a longer fuse, I believe goes to, again, the fact that there's 2 million mitochondria in every cell in your brain and neurons. And so it can just help balance out your nervous system to manage these things.
Which I think you talked about improving sleep was one of the effects that people have talked about, that much improved sleep, calmer, all of these things are all I think we discussed also that some of the testimonials are quite amazing. I mean, something I found, and I can't put a finger on it, my eyesight. I've never had problems with eyesight till about 5 years ago. And then I started to have very bad difficulty at dusk, because that's the time when the eyeball has to sort of change over from realigning from light to dark. And I would panic. I'm a trail runner in the forest, and I would panic at dusk, and I would panic when I was driving. I can't say for sure, but all I know is around the time I started to take the molecule, I do know that I had some glasses I purchased from a couple of years ago for night driving. I just don't find I'm using them. I don't find I'm using my close-ups to do my watercolor painting. It's just gradual, but definitely there. So that's what I found. And I also was found that, like, if it's about replenishing, the eyeball needs moisture to do these things, to go from black and white, dark and white. So I'm wondering if have you heard any other kinds of things you've heard of testimonials from people?
About month 3 with our product, people are talking, again, if you're reducing the negative impact of stress mitochondria, we have testimonials that we can't even share, right? The FDA has requirements. You've got to go through specific research. So we have powerful testimonials similar to yours. Now, if you think about it, you already have 2 million mitochondria in every brain cell. What's processing vision? Well, it is your brain, right? And in fact, your eyes are interrelated with your brain. And so there are elevated, it's not the typical 50 to 5,000 mitochondria per cell. In your rods and cones, it's significantly higher. So again, if you're reducing the negative impact of these stress mitochondria, it's not really that surprising. Now, we don't have any studies and we can't make any claims, but yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
So what you talked about some people having improved sleep. We also talked about, I think, migraines was another area that My Vital C has been looking into. People that suffering from migraines. Can you talk specifically about that?
Yeah. So we are a very weird supplement company. And what I mean by that is most supplement companies don't continue to do research, and even fewer publish. I do have one slide that kind of covers some of this stuff. So we published, we actually provided the material and were mentioned in the original study. That's the 2012 BATI study, where the test subs given our molecule live 90% longer. The lead researcher on that, although that study is called BATI, the BATI study, the lead researcher is a Dr. Fathi Musa. Oh, I didn't share it, did I? Let me do that real quick. The lead researcher on that particular study was a Dr. Fathi Musa. We published with him in 2024. Very proud of that. Also in 2025, I was just communicating with him again. We'll be publishing with him again today in 2026. We did a crossover sleep study. This is there were a low amount of people in this. And it was crossover, meaning we collected 10 days of survey data about sleep prior to taking the product, 10 days back on it, 10 days back off of it, and then 10 days back on that product. 100% of the participants reported improvements in sleep when they were on the product. So a pretty fantastic result. We're actually going to do a more formalized sleep study so that we can meet the requirements of a clinical trial. We just started our migraine study. So this is a picture of the landing page. We've got a landing page there. I'll get you a special link for that landing page. People can join the migraine study. As you imagine, clinical trials are expensive. And so the way the migraine study works is you purchase 2 bottles. And once you're done with that migraine study, we give you a store credit for those same 2 bottles. So basically they're free. The reason we're doing migraine studies is because of so many amazing testimonials as it relates to migraines. So we're excited about the results that we're going to be able to get from that. The HSCRP study, HSCRP stands for high sensitivity C-reactive protein. That is an inflammatory marker. We have a great doctor told us that our product is reducing elevated HSCRPs, stuff that could indicate cancer, stuff that could indicate elevated risk for cardiovascular disease, bringing those numbers into normal range in 4 to 8 weeks. He also shared that his cohort is seeing 20 to 60% improvements in HRV and sleep, which is pretty amazing. And then finally, the wrinkle and age spot. We've got a 2-part product that people love, and both of the molecules in that. One is a peptide called UTH29, which stands for Youth 29, and the other one is the olive oil. The ESS60, actually, it's not olive oil, it's an MCT. The ESS60 molecule, both of those have great peer-reviewed published research on skin and hair improvements, and so we combined those, and we're doing that study.
Makes sense, because it's interesting when you talk about the wrinkle study versus the eye. It's fluid restrictions is one of the real problems of a manifestation of damaged mitochondria. I'm guessing to get things, so improving that would improve skin, would improve the fluid, the flow of it, as we're talking about. I also understand you talk about menopause as well. Some of as helping with menopause.
Yeah. So we do have a product. My wife made me make this bottle. It is in fact the same bottle, right? It's a ESS60 and olive oil. And she had the way I tell the story is, there's a couple ways that I tell the story, but one of them is, she went through early onset menopause, had all the symptoms, which are, frustrating and physically challenging and all of this stuff, right at about the time that we were bringing this product to market. And, often it's hard to convince your spouse that you know what you're talking about, right? When you're talking about something new. So I was kind of going down this path of being the chief scientist of a health and wellness company. And I finally convinced her to take the product, and it had impact on her menopause symptoms, right? So that was actually really valuable, which is why she made me make the menopause support label. And then it also had an impact on the main migraines that and again, we're not making claims about migraines. We have more research to do, but that's why we're doing a research on frequent headaches.
Which is really responsible to make sure that there's no false claims. We're just looking at what's happened and the results, right?
Yeah.
And I think also when it comes to balancing hormones, when it comes to all of those things, it's really key. I have a couple of other questions, and one's going to get into some really interesting stuff.
Cool.
If I type up on the computer, and I'm not a fan of these fact checkers, and I'm not a fan of AI, because we talked about this. And I type out C60, and I understand that ESS60 is a different product, and in itself that it has that safety bit to it, and it tells me that it's the first type of nanotechnology. And the first thing I do is I recoil I'm really upset because we've been told that the COVID shots have nanotechnology. Is this
Mm.
nanotechnology? Can you explain specifically for viewers who would have that concern?
Well, I think you have to be really careful in kind of being afraid of nanotechnology in general.
Yeah.
I don't think we're as advanced as people are concerned about yet. And I'm not saying that we won't get there and that you shouldn't be concerned about it. I just don't think you should be concerned about it yet. And here's part of the reason. So one of the things, um, if you think about salt water, by the time salt dissolves in the water, you've actually separated the Na from the Cl. So it's not just NaCl salt, it's actually separated in there down to individual atoms. There is nothing more nano than salt water, and no one would even hesitate for a second to soak their feet in it, to go into the ocean. Like, these are not considerations. So that's one piece where this comes into play. Like, this is the first molecule that was intentionally developed, or we became aware of it from the nano perspective. Now, this molecule is a naturally occurring molecule, right? So everyone in your audience is already exposed to it, right? So, and I'll describe it this way. If you take the soot from a candle flame, and usually you just take a cold steel plate and put it over the candle flame, you'll collect this deep, dark soot on it. That soot has parts per million or parts per billion of this ESS60 molecule in it. So everyone has been exposed to it. Now, there is no difference between the molecule that you would collect in the soot of a candle or the molecule that you would manufacture in a reactor, which has the same conditions as space, which is where you can find tons of this. So there is no way to take this molecule in and of itself, right, and turn it into any sort of nanotechnology. It's just called nanotechnology because it's really the first molecule that was kind of understood at the individual molecular level and really grew up a whole industry of like nanotubes and all sorts of things. So yeah, so I understand people's concerns. One, I don't think we're there in general yet. And then two, not this molecule.
Makes sense. That makes sense. And I think also carbon aren't we made of carbon in I mean, that's a vital component. I have my last area I wanted to go into is an interesting one. There are a few different companies who provide products that they claim to be made with C60. And again, I distinguish between C60 and ESS60 because, and hopefully when you answer this, you can, highlight that distinction. How do we know if we go to My Vital C? How do we explain to the audience? How can you explain that that's going to be something safe, and how you've tested other products? Because I've seen, I think the purple. Can you explain why it's important to have a reputable company to have My Vital C?
Well, I think it's important to have a reputable company with anything you would ever put in your body, right? And on your skin, right? So you don't want to just go around willy-nilly and go like, oh, this company is great, whatever. You want to do the research. You want to, potentially, you have a connection with them, like through this podcast, broadcast, and understand, that they're ethical people who are doing the right thing by their audience. So that's step one. And then, are they a GMP facility? That stands for Good Manufacturing Practices. It's an FDA designation. We are a GMP facility. So very proud of that. The way we think about the distinguishing of C60 and ESS60 is that C60 is for industrial applications, and there is peer-reviewed published research that proves that if you process it improperly, it's harmful. ESS60 is C60 that's been processed for people and pets, right? And we tested 22 of the products in the industrial C60 space, and all of them were woefully low in concentration. I can tell you there's at least 2 products on the market that don't have any C60 in them at all and market themselves as C60 companies. And there is at least one company, I think it's actually 2, that is selling a water-soluble version of C60. This may be something good in the future, but there is 0 toxicity studies on this man-made molecule. And I tend to not want to put anything that's man-made and not tested in my body. Like, I just think that's a bad idea. I personally would never sell that molecule. We could sell it to research institutions. We don't even have it on our in our catalog, because it's just not the kind of thing that we want to have. So those are some of the things that you need to be careful of. And the way we really kind of mapped it out is ESS 60, make sure that you get a safe product and make sure that you get the highest concentration. Because when I tested 22 of the products, woefully low in concentration were most of them.
Yeah, I think that makes a difference, and being very careful about what you're getting, not just that it's pure olive oil or pure, the oil carrier, but in fact that you haven't got something that goes into a bad byproduct afterwards, that you've got something, and that's what this, the safety and security of the ESS 60. Well, thank you, Chris. This has been really good for our audience. I just want to confirm that to buy the ESS 60 products from My Vital C, we have a link. We have a link from Freedom Forum News. And we encourage everybody who is watching to go into our website, to use the link, and to get healthy.
Well, if I could, if you want to pull up the slides again, I actually have your landing page so they can find everything that they need here. A couple things I want to point out. There is a coupon code. You have to go to the page. We're not going to give it out here. You have to go to the page to get that coupon code. I've interviewed 55 experts in longevity, and I compiled 18 biohacking tips from them, and that's free. You just need to give your name and email. Happy to get that to you. Lots of content, testimonials, and we really think about our product in terms of a 3-month time frame. And so when I get down here, lots of testimonials. There's a reason that we have this special offer. By the way, this is a 40% offer for your audience if they want to get 6 bottles. And why 6? We think about our product in a 3-month time frame. Let me map that out first. So month 1, and it parallels our consistent testimonial, right? So consistent testimonial is people take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and better sleep that night. Month 1, people report focus and energy. I'll share one particular testimonial, an influencer that we got some product to, that first night that she took the product, shared that she didn't finish her cup of coffee. I used to be a 2 to 3 cup of coffee per day person. Now I'm like 1 or half. And mostly it's the ritual of coming into the office and making my cup of coffee, and then I drink it, right? Month 2 is sleep. I think sleep takes 2 months. I think they're experiencing it in month 1, but sleep, everybody gets a little bit more or less sleep every day. And to attribute the impact on sleep to the fact that they started My Vital C previously, sometimes that can be hard. In month 2, I'll share my business coach. What he likes to point out is that for 50 years, he needed an alarm clock to wake up. When he started taking My Vital C, he no longer needs the alarm clock. Now, he's a business coach, so he's got late night mixers, late night dinners, and none of that matters, except if he doesn't get the product for about 10 days, then it starts to matter because he needs the alarm clock again. And then finally, month 3 is these systemic benefits, the kind of benefits that we can't share because the FDA won't allow us. And I actually believe that that's the right decision. We've got more research to do. And as I pointed out, we're doing that research, and as you're aware of. On month 3, the one testimony I'll share is my father-in-law was walking with a cane. At about the 3-month mark, he started to not need the cane because he was walking further, not because of our product. He actually started losing weight. That became this kind of systemic benefit that you might notice in month 3. That's why we've got a 3-bottle offer and we've got a 6-bottle. Maybe you want to take 3 bottles for yourself, give 3 bottles to someone, or I would probably be selfish and keep all 6 of them to myself. The next offer that we have is the individual. This is a fantastic UTH29 peptide plus the ESS 60 molecule. I'll share that one group, the Boulder Longevity Institute, their team came up to me and they were basically like, hey, to live longer, get that out of the way. Hey, to live healthier, get that out of the way. I'm here at your booth because I want some of your Skin Reduo. So that's available here again in the 2, 3, and 6 bottle count or set count. And then finally, we recommend the Inside Out, which is both of them, both the oral consumable and the Skin Reduo set. And then finally, I want to talk about my book ever so briefly because I have this thing I'm super proud of. The book is available on Amazon. It's called Live Longer and Better. Your journey to living longer and better has never been more achievable than today. It's $19.99 on Amazon. It's also $19.99 on your link. But for $10 extra, I will autograph the book, and 100% of that $10 fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad. You may remember the movie The Sound of Freedom, which is an
Yes.
amazing movie about a horrible topic, which is child exploitation. Operation Underground is who that movie, the organization that movie is about. And I'm really proud to be giving 100% of that autograph fee to Operation Underground Railroad.
Oh, that's fantastic, because we have brought those topics up on our show as well. And I think that's really excellent to know that. I think this has been fantastic. We've given the audience a lot to understand, and I'm really happy with it. I'm excited. Okay.
Marianne,
Thank you, Chris. This has been extremely informative. I'm really looking forward to our next time that we can meet and have an update on some of the new developments and the testimonies of people who have taken this for migraines and sleep and the other areas. Thank you so much, Chris.
Marianne, thank you so much for allowing me to be the geeky person that is my inner self. I appreciate it so much.
That's what our audience wants. So get that link and get healthy. Okay. Good night.